Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to review and talk about the books I read in the last couple of weeks. The first one is Connie Willis's To Say Nothing of the Dog. This is a super delightful story about time traveling to Victorian era England. When a cat accidentally goes from the past to the future, the ramifications of the time travel and the timeline might be earth-shattering because small moments and almost insignificant things can cause a domino effect of events. This is just a wonderful story that reads like a Victorian romance comedy, but with time travel elements and effects at the very heart. I found this story to be so comforting and engaging, and it's so well written. I highly recommend this one for anyone looking for a sci-fi story with some heart and comedy. You don't have to read the first book before this one, Doomsday Book. I loved it. I'm going to give this one 5 stars. I just loved it. The Last Emprox by John Scalzi. I was disappointed in this one. This is the third book in the Interdependency series by Scalzi. And this sees our character, Empress Greyland II, having to deal with the collapse of the interdependency as the flow pathways between all the planets start to break down. Once again, this is a court intrigue science fiction book with little to no action and a lot of dialogue. The book reads quickly, is relatively short, and it has Scalzi's fun, predictable personalities in it, also known as a bunch of profanity. The problems I had with this book, though, are there's a few of them, but the actual book is twofold. The first issue is that a lot of the first third of the book, so the first 100 pages, is playing catch up with the characters, kind of reminding the reader where we came from and setting the stage of the story. Then the last 100 pages was just an extremely disappointing to an ending of this trilogy. I felt that it ended with no excitement, and I was just like, okay, all right, whatever. Overall, the third book in this trilogy ended up being maybe 100 pages of actual extra content. And I feel like the third book wasn't even really needed. It could have just been added to the second book. It was weird. It just felt really off. Another issue I had with this book comes with the afterword. Now, Scalzi wrote the afterword back in October of 2019. And in the afterword, he explicitly talks about how the interdependency always was going to be a trilogy. Okay, so when Scalzi first got that announcement with Tor for that 10-book deal for $1 million, they then came out with the press release for the Collapsing Empire, and I think a lot of people were expecting it to be a series, a longer series than 3 books. And now he's saying in the afterword that it was always supposed to be a trilogy, but it wasn't written that way. The first book was written in a way where the characters were more focused. It took its time. The second book sped up the pace of events a little bit more. So I thought maybe we were going to open up the world a ton in the third book just because the pace of events went a little bit quicker. But it didn't. The third book basically just finishes the series, and it was disappointing. I'm gonna have to take his word for it, though, that this was always going to be a trilogy, but it just didn't feel like it, and I felt disappointed. Also, his acknowledgments were weird. Okay, so he talks about how difficult he had writing this book because of the Trump administration. He goes on to talk about how he procrastinated writing this book, and he was pressured to write this and finish this and turn this in. He waited to the last minute. And you know what? It definitely shows. It definitely shows with the quality of the book, in my opinion. But it was weird because it almost felt like he was using Trump as an excuse to not deliver a book that's up to his standards. It was really odd, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He goes on to talk about, how everyone needs to vote against Trump, which I agree with, but I'm so surprised that this blatant partisan message got through. Like, the editor and Tor was like, okay, yeah, we can put that in there. And I don't know, it just felt off. I have to say, Scalzi has been an auto buy for me for a while now, but after the end of this trilogy, I am disappointed. I don't have as much faith in him as I used to. I'm hoping that he can turn it around a little bit, but for now, I think he's going to be demoted to a library, borrow, instead of buying his books. I'm going to give this a 2-star rating. It was really mediocre, and it was just okay. Before Mars by Emma Newman, the third book of the Planetfall series, takes place on Mars with a team of individuals exploring the planet. There's a new person on the planet. Her name is Anna Kubrin, and she is tasked to be the geologist and also to paint pictures of the Mars landscape. When she arrives to a place she's never been before, she finds a mysterious note in her quarters, written in her own handwriting, not to trust the colony's psychologist. Ooh, pretty cool. So this is a fantastic mystery science fiction story that asks the question, what is really going on? And I love that type of genre. Anna Kubrin is a rich character with a lot of flaws, and Emma Newman writes so well, getting into the head of her characters, the emotions, the thoughts, fabulous. And we just understand all of their reasons for doing things, and we just connect with them on a very personal level. Fantastic book, fantastic series. 5 stars for Before Mars by Emma Newman. Stalking Darkness by Flewelling. This is the second book in the Night Runner series that was written back in the 90s. It is a fantasy world that is very familiar to people in the genre, and it follows 2 roguish characters that work as spies for a royal court. Sergal and Alec are the 2 rogues, and they're just a great duo of characters. And there's a budding romance between them as well. And it just makes it so much more interesting. Stalking Darkness is exactly what I wanted this series to do. Up the stakes, become darker, and infuse the series with amazing villains. If you liked Michael J. Sullivan's books, I think you'd like this book. I think you'd like this series. I gave this second book here a 4-star rating. All right, so Lockwood and Company is the series. The Hollow Boy is the book by Jonathan Stroud. It's the 3rd book in that series. And in this, they have a case of ghosts causing havoc in a large portion of London. Our threesome of Anthony Lockwood, Lucy, and George are in rare form. But a new girl enters the picture. Her name is Molly, and Lucy starts to feel really jealous and insecure about herself and her role with Lockwood and Company because of Molly. I loved in this book that we got really a closer look at Lockwood and what happened to his family, and it opened up the world building a little bit more. However, I did not care for the jealousy aspect of Lucy against Molly. Okay, it's all right to add it in there a little bit, but it was non-stop through the entire book. It just went on way too long, and it was focused on by Stroud way too often. I'll continue to read this series, but I definitely was expecting this one to be better. I only gave it a 3.5. And lastly, the last book I read was the fourth book in the Planetfall series, Atlas Alone. It's extremely important to read after Atlas, the second book in this series, before this book, because it continues kind of where that book led off. But in this book, our main character is Dee. Dee is an immersive gamer that finds herself in a series of deadly games. When she kills an in-game character because of the awful thing they did, they end up dying in the real world. Dee is a complex character that might not be the most liked character in this series, but she doesn't ever back down. This is a story about justice versus murder. When is it one or the other? And even if there are individuals that are subjugating others, when is it okay to basically kill them? Where do we draw the line when it comes to ideologies? And where do we draw the line when it comes to people trying to do harm to others? This is the weakest book, in my opinion, in this series, mainly because Dee's character just annoyed me a little bit. Especially her very anti-Christian sentiments and statements. It was okay to have them in there somewhat, but it was in there quite often. Even if the Christians depicted in Newman's world are horrible people, it was in there a lot. If you like reading about characters in like virtual worlds and doing things that impacts the real world, this is probably something you're going to enjoy and love. Really, the plot in this was relatively weak, whereas the other books, the plots were much more complex. But I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time reading it, and I gave it a 3.5 rating. Okay, so those were the books I've read in the last couple weeks. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys soon. Please let me know what you're reading below, and if you've read any of these things I mentioned, what your thoughts on them were as well. If you disagreed with me, go ahead and let me know as well. If I'm wrong about anything, let me know as well. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you all soon.